If you're being essentially abused and taken advantage of, there's a moment when you got to check in and go, I need to get out of here.
If you're in a group and it causes you a lot of stress, I would make sure the tax you're paying to be in that group is worth the return you're getting from being in it. And if it's all drama and no upside, I would sayonara.
Our breath gives us so much as far as getting that fight or flight response under control. Are you in that fight or flight response? Trying to get to your next patient. So ground, feel, and breathe. Just take that second for yourself and then move on.
Get ready for your unofficial dental hygiene podcast. These are the tales of two hygienists, one East Coast RDH and one West Coast hygienist. Listen as they tackle the profession of dental hygiene with humor and enthusiasm. Now, please join Michelle Strange and Andrew Johnston as they tell you a tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists, episode number 281. My name is Andrew.
And this is Michelle. Welcome back to the podcast. And if you're a return listener, welcome back. If you're a newbie, stick around. Subscribe, why don't you?
Yeah.
I'm going to try not to be super sniffly because I just did a shot of clear nose spray before we came on, which probably in hindsight wasn't the best idea I ever had.
Man, for the amount of times that you mentioned that on this show, I really
I really should get like an affiliate link. I should get some.
Really should.
I do love it.
You know, I was also thinking about, we never did, I don't think, really jump into this as much as we should have, but I was thinking about, do you remember when we were thinking of starting that blog that had all of our travel recommendations? And I mean, I think it might be on our website somewhere, but it's not full like I was expecting it probably would eventually be. We probably need to go back to that.
Well, that's because COVID happened.
Is that what happened? Is that why we stopped doing that?
Because we stopped traveling.
Oh, that's what happened.
We literally stopped traveling. It just seemed like something that wasn't real priority at the middle of 2020. Yeah.
Probably not a click-throughs on that one, would there have been?
Yeah, So we put that on the back burner for sure.
I need new luggage. So if you listeners, if you guys have any connections with, was it Away?
Away. Well, we do have an affiliate link, so buy some Away luggage through us. Because, I mean, that is pretty fantastic. That's my favorite luggage so far.
Yeah.
I don't know. But this is a dental hygiene podcast, by the way.
Yeah. And so keeping on theme with it being dentistry related, I want to talk about the messed upness that was your mouth last week.
Oh my gosh. I had so much empathy for my patients. So much empathy. Well, this episode that we're going to have the interview in a minute for is all about mental health awareness and like stress and how you do things. And it's been postulated that my mouth issues were because of the stress of me getting this house fully renovated and cleaned and a garage sale and all the things I'm doing right now. I think it was viral, which is weird too, because I also don't go anywhere and interact with many people. So, and if I do, I'm like masked up and everything. So anywho, if we got some students listening, maybe you can run through your pathology course. If we got some veterans, here's a case study for you. So on a Friday night, I was brushing my teeth and I got to the distal of 15 and something felt, I don't know, tender. And so being the psychotic hygienist that I am, I got in there a little harder with my toothbrush and it was tender. It was like sore, almost like something might have been caught back there, but like maybe wasn't there anymore. I don't know if that makes sense, but anyhow, go to sleep. Saturday morning, I wake up and the whole backside of that maxillary tuberosity and like onto the facial is super swollen. Like I could feel it with my tongue. It was probably twice the size, right? And of course, since I work for Mouthwatch, I have an intraoral camera attached to my computer. So I got in there and it was definitely swollen and you could see the signs of an ulcer starting on that maxillary tuberosity. And I was like, ugh, like, did I do that or was that coming? And that was what, I don't know. I don't know which was the chicken or the egg there, right? So that happens. It's so tender for, I don't know, 3 or 4 days. And then like Tuesday, all of a sudden I start feeling my lymph nodes. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, all the lymph nodes on this like left side are super swollen, and my palate where my incisive papilla is like red and swollen, almost like I bit into something and burned it. And then my frenum, my maxillary frenum was swollen and red. And then on either side of it, it was a combination of like leukoplakia, but also just like raised, almost a papillary appearance to it. It was so strange. And I have intraoral pictures. Maybe I should put them somewhere.
You should.
It was very strange. And I was like, this is so weird. Like I could, like just touching underneath my nose, I was like, good Lord, this is so sore. So then my submandibular lymph nodes were like super swollen. And then all of a sudden on the whole, I'd say from like 18 to 22 was so red and swollen. And then it almost felt ulcerated, but it didn't look ulcerated. And when I looked in, it looked almost lichen planus like along that ridge. And I have a scar back there because of my jaw surgery. So which makes it all look a little off anyway, right? Because I just got that scar tissue. And I was like, God, what in the world is happening to me? Like, this is so crazy. And my lymph nodes were even more swollen the next day. I could like put my chin down. I'm like, oh my God, it hurts to even put my chin down. This is so crazy. And I don't know, for a minute I was like, because I've had quite a few patients. I don't know why this was like my thing for a little bit, but I had a lot of patients that had lichen planus, erosive lichen planus with bulla formation, and pemphigus. And I cared for them. Like those were my patients. And it got to a point where we were doing even those fluorescent biopsies to, differentiate between the different types of lichen planus, or if it was pemphigus or pemphigoid. Now I'm confused. Ooh, I should probably go do a refresher on that. One of those. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I getting like some kind of autoimmune issue in my mouth? This is crazy. It hurt to brush. I was so happy that I had a Tepe special care brush from way back when I worked with Tepe, which is like the post-surgical brush that's very, very soft. Oh, I don't know what I would have done, but I could not do good home care. I could not floss my teeth or even use my interdental brushes. Everything hurt. And then so that was my birthday, right? That Thursday. And I was eating salsa and my mouth was on absolute fire because that was like a gift sent to me because my favorite thing in the world, chips and salsa. And I was like, my mouth is literally, I don't even know if it's going to have like mucosa tomorrow when I wake up because this burns so bad. And then Saturday, Sunday, everything just kind of started to feel normal again. It was so weird. So weird. I think it's viral.
So we think it was stress related is what you're saying, and that it was like a viral manifestation.
No, I think these are two different theories. I think Carrie Ibbotson being one of them, that I manifest stress in my mouth, which is actually, this would be the second time that this has happened in a very stressful, moving time in my life, where I'd say 7 or 10 years ago when I was at my perio practice, the whole roof of my mouth became swollen, like huge, like the soft palate, everything, even around my tori was like noticeably swollen. I don't know, maybe that is the case, but I just felt like the way that it manifested, and then the fact that it started on that distal of 15, went to the incisive papilla, into the frenum, and then eventually all my mouth hurt. Like everything was tender, but not everything was ulcerated and ulcerated is not even the right word. That's why I'm like, I gotta get in my pathology brain here. It was like along that ridge, it couldn't be wiped off, but it was a white, rough leukoplakia, I guess is the best way to describe it. So give me y'all's best guess. What y'all think out there? Let me be a case study. Tell me what you think it would be. But that was rough. And I had a lot of empathy for patients that have those autoimmune issues. Because, man.
Oh, for sure.
I used to have a patient that would tell me, which is when I did find Tepe, because I was getting that extra soft brush. And then Tepe has like an extra soft version of their interdental brushes that correlate with their regular brushes. And so they would hop from that soft bristle to the extra soft bristle. And they would always say, when they used soft bristled brushes, because we were very specific about which ones we would give them so they didn't create a problem, they were like, it feels like knives are ripping at my gums. And I was like, I felt every part of that analogy last week.
Gross.
It's so weird. Have you ever had anything like that? No?
I was trying to rack my brain. The only time I've ever had, I think, any sort of like, okay, so a while back, we were talking to Uchi Odiatu about supplements, and we are talking about some other things. And not to derail the whole story, but I had some other things that were happening with me with like the probiotics, but it was more like a mood thing. Do you remember that? Where I'm like, dude, I think I'm going crazy. Anyways, so then I'd taken some multivitamins and I had a bunch of ulcerations in my mouth from the multivitamin. Well, actually, coincidentally, probably, but never, ever have I had it. And then I stopped it and they healed up. And then I tried it again a couple weeks later, and then those ulcerations came back again.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. And they were, ingesting. They're not even like chewables or anything like that.
Right.
So it's not like it was some sort of irritation. It was like, I don't know. So other than that, no, I've never had any sort of, which is, I know it sounds bad, but like, I am really grateful for you to have that opportunity though, because if you don't feel it yourself, if you don't go through it yourself, then how can you explain to somebody else or empathize with them? So,
well, I think there's a lot of hygienists and dental professionals just like in general that have a lot of empathy because they've gone through a lot of their own oral health issues. Me having ortho so many times to jaw surgery, now condylar degeneration, can't chew my food to save my dang life was just another layer of like empathy that I feel for patients when they sit in my chair and they feel frustrated or they're not being listened to. Because honestly, like when I looked at some of those intraoral pictures that I was taking, like I took a bunch because I was trying to like find a way to properly depict what it did not look as bad as it felt. Like it did not. Like the ulcer, yes, like the papilla, a little weird on the frenum, but it just like that whole that left bottom side, like 18 to 21, did not look as painful. Sometimes you look at these erosive lichen planus patients. Have you ever had one?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, where it just looks like their whole mouth is just chewed up. And you're just like, oh, that looks like it hurts so bad. You looked at my mouth, I was like, yeah, it looks maybe a little off, but not for what you're telling me. And that is honestly what gave me the most. So like now when patients say something to me, like there's something there and I go, I don't think there is. I might think twice about that.
Yeah. I think if we can get those pictures, I know there's a way to put them in the show notes. So maybe we'll have Brittany do that after we go through the editing process.
I also would just like everybody not to judge me because I literally could not brush my teeth properly.
Judge away, guys. This is the one time that we're going to be able to finally get back at Machele. Judge her. Gosh.
No, I'm going to have to get in there and use my airflow, like just because I feel like I can't get the stain off now because I wasn't able to brush for a full week and I still drank my coffee though somehow. So I am going to get that airflow and do airflow myself.
That's awesome.
I'll try to take a video of that because that will be interesting too. Yeah. So weird, right? Super weird. So this week on the podcast episode, Andrew, you are not on this interview, but I really enjoyed it very much. And I appreciate both of these humans for coming on a little short notice. And it was a really great conversation. And I did talk about like a little bit of a situation that I had as a clinician, because we talk about motivational interviewing a lot, like at least I do. I know I practice it on a regular basis. And, I was really excited that we were talking about this particular instance. So I want you to tell me if this has ever happened to you, because I had this I almost felt like whiplash between patients where I started my morning off with the most engaged, excited, asked a ton of questions, was so grateful for all the things I was telling this person. And then immediately after this was a recall patient, and I had written on there, does not want to hear anything that I have to say, tried to have this conversation, not interested. And so I went into it going, okay, I'm not going to be pushy. I'm going to try to use my motivational interviewing techniques. But this person was so stoic and so, it was such a, I don't even know the right word without saying a cuss word, but to go from somebody that was engaged and excited to almost hitting a brick wall. It depleted my energy. It really did.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever had that?
Oh, yeah.
Ugh,
Lots of times.
crushing.
Yeah.
Crushing.
It's rough.
It is. So we talked about that on the podcast and a bunch of other ways that you can help manage your mind with your coworkers, with your patients. And so I want to say thank you to these two guests, and know without a doubt you're going to learn something from Machele and Kandice. Enjoy the episode.
Before we get to the interview, we want to say a big thank you to Paradise Dental Technologies, or PDT, for supporting the continuing education portion of this podcast for so many years. If you do not know already, many of our full-length episodes count for CE. You'll find the links in the show notes, or you can sign up for our newsletter by going to untitled2hygienist.com. When you sign up for the newsletter, we will periodically send out links to shows that have expiring CE courses attached. And none of this could be possible without the support of the amazing people over at PDT. So check out their hygiene and other instruments at pdtdental.com. That's pdtdental.com. Now, on to the interview.
So listeners, welcome to the interview portion of this podcast. I don't want to even call myself the only host because I want this to be like a conversation today. So I did bring on two guests. Andrew's not here with me right now, but I have two amazing people and I'm really excited about this conversation. So it's Mental Health Awareness Month here in May. And so I brought two people on that know about this so much. One is personally helping me manage my mind on a weekly basis, if not via voice, audio, text on a daily basis. Machele Galloway, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I'm Machele Galloway. I'm a certified time and mind management coach, and I work with women one-on-one, and I just launched my first new group coaching program.
Woohoo, and I'm in it, and it's great.
Yeah, it's so fun. And my website is lifeleapcoaching.com. You can pretty much find anything you need on that website.
Yes. And you've probably heard Machele, if you've been listening to the podcast a while, she was on another episode that we had about managing our minds. And she kind of coached me and Andrew in our relationship. And she was on our mentor episode where she was my co-host. We were the Misha Mash show when we were at RDH event. I forget what that was.
Evolution. Yeah.
Evolution.
So
That's
fun.
it. That's it. So you've heard her before. Welcome again.
Thank you.
And then I have a new voice on the podcast. Kandice, say your last name for me. So
It's
don't butcher.
Swarthout. Yes, you're welcome.
Ruined it. I'm so sorry. And you are also a hygienist. We've met many years ago, and I have just been waiting to find a place that was just perfect for all of your knowledge to have you as kind of a co-host guest. We're all just hosts on this. We're just going to do it. So welcome, Kandice.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, my name is Kandice Swarthout. I'm a RDH. I'm an educator. I teach at Collin College in McKinney, Texas. So good morning from Texas, y'all. I'm also a licensed professional counselor, and I do CEs for dental professionals to help them just get in that right mind space while they're working, try to manage burnout. Burnout is a huge topic I talk on. So I also have a little private practice where I do part-time. I see clients, mental health clients. So also writing for two of my fave publications in the industry, RDH Magazine and Today's RDH. So, and my website is, I'll throw that out there real quick. It's CandicesSwarthout.com. Super easy to remember. So thank you for having me on today, Machele.
No, I'm so excited to have this conversation. I started therapy years ago, and my therapist I was doing cognitive behavior therapy, and my therapist released me and kind of graduated me. And then Machele picked me up because I was like, I feel like, I am learning the things that can put the cognitive behavior therapy into play, but I need somebody on a regular basis to help me manage my mind.
Absolutely. And I think that's for all of us, something I always joke and say, don't trust a therapist that doesn't have a therapist, right? So as a therapist, I have one and I go to her, and sometimes it's, times when I really need her and I'm seeing her every week. And then I get to sort of this PRN place where maybe I check in with her once every 6 months or so. So I totally agree with that. You need this check-in space and a continuation of that help from someone.
Machele, when did you start kind of managing your mind and looking at mental health and all of that journey for you?
Oh my goodness. I was a hot mess in my 20s, so I've been self-care, self-development nerd for many, many years. I own all the books, listen to all the podcasts, I've done all the things. And when I first hired my life coach, that was really when I started to see like real tangible different results. And I worked with a therapist for many years. But the life coaching stuff was kind of where the rubber met the road for me. So many, many, many years. Yeah.
You've been at it a minute. How about you, Kandice?
I would say probably in my early to mid 30s, I started to realize, okay, I need some help with some things. I was in a marriage that I've left since. And so there was a lot of like turmoil in my life here and there with, stepkids and relationships. And so I realized that, hey, I can't do this by myself. And I started on that track. And then as I wanted to kind of shift my profession from dentistry into something else, it just felt, like we're, as hygienists, we have like that natural inclination towards being a counselor. How many times have you counseled someone in your dental chair? It happens probably every day to some degree. And so it felt like a natural shift. And so I would say probably, my mid 30s, I really got into, like Machele was saying, reading all the books and then taking that dive into going back and doing the grad school thing.
So, most of the people on here listening at the moment and in the future are going to be clinicians. And the one thing that I discovered when I started to speak to somebody and acknowledge some of my behaviors and the assumptions and the biases that I have, I really noticed that I projected that on a lot of my patients as well. And do you see that a lot in not just patient care, but also relationships?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that I talk to hygienists about is personal responsibility. And it hurts sometimes to look at that. I mean, I think the three of us that have done our own work can say, when you have this realization about your behavior that isn't pretty, that it gets you where you live, and it might take some time to process that and make those changes, because we don't want to look at ourselves in a way that's negative, and that maybe however I'm being triggered by the patient is part of my response to them that might not be positive. And then, the interaction we have. So yeah. And I see it in relationships too. I with my clients, we talk a lot about bringing our child self into adult relationships. And whoa, right? Because we're all trying to solve these childhood issues as adults in our romantic relationships. And that's a whole show in itself. But yeah, is it right?
I was going to say, Machele and I have this conversation a lot.
It is amazing.
It is.
And Machele, your thing is more like, we're all like little 12-year-olds, and you have me often talk to myself, like my 12-year-old self. And
yeah.
That is icky and horrible, but also amazing.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think I watched a TikTok and the guy was talking about this, and he said, we're always the same age inside. Like, we're always that 12-year-old. We just have a car and adult responsibilities and oftentimes messy relationships. And you can really learn a lot about yourself when you go back to kind of that 12-year-old age and mindset. It's crazy how similar it is in a lot of cases.
Yeah. And I find that when I start digging into patient stories or client stories, that we get to that age at some point, like where we pinpoint that's where it happened. It's 12, it's 10, and that's where they're stuck emotionally. And it's always attached to some sort of trauma. It's attached to divorce of parents. It's attached to maybe sexual abuse or something where it happened during that age. And then we get in that place of being kind of stuck there emotionally, and we don't even realize it as we carry it into our adult life, because Machele's saying, we have car payments and mortgages and we're doing adult things on the outside, but are we doing adult things on the inside?
That's good. So I was thinking, as I was mentally preparing for this conversation, some of the ways that I know that I've personally come into work to treat patients really messy. And now that I am trying to do my own self-work, I see it in others. And please correct me if I'm wrong with this, because I think one of the ways that I see it very often in ones that I did was bringing all the baggage from life into the office and lashing out at my fellow employee, my team members, Do you think that that's a common one when we're not managing our mind?
Yeah, I think that's common in any relationship, whether it's a coworker, romantic relationship. We do always project our mess onto other people. And it's interesting. I worked with a hygienist who was really pissed off at the practice owner, at the way he was running the practice during COVID, like angry. And her big story is he doesn't respect hygienists. And she would get so worked up by replaying the story over and over and over. And when we really started looking at it, she was the one not respecting him. She was doing exactly what she was blaming him of doing, and she was making this situation so much worse. And that spilled over into every area of her life. And so a lot of it is like and I think, Machele, you and I did a lot of this in the beginning, kind of what is write down your story and then go through each sentence. Is this a fact or is this your story? And 99% of your pain comes from the story.
Yeah.
So you would agree? Yeah, I was going to say, go ahead, Kandice.
It's so hard. I hear these different things about, it's unprofessional to bring your personal stuff to work, right? We don't do that. We need to check it at the door. We need to find some little symbolic way to leave it at the door. But really, can we do that? And when we're going through serious things, that's part of who we are. It's part of our being and how we interact with people. It's just about managing that. And like Machele's saying, how much of it is a fact? How much of it is the pain from your story? And checking in with that 12-year-old self as we walk into the office if we're having a tough time, and seeing where are we being triggered? How are we being triggered? And finding ways to manage that during the day, because really just leaving it at the door, right? When we have some serious things going on in our life, can be a big ask. Sometimes when I hear that, it worries me a little bit that people that are listening might feel like that they're complete failures because they can't leave it at the door and it's still with them throughout their workday.
Yeah, one of the things I do with my clients, a lot of the work when they're going through a difficult time or a high anxiety phase or whatever, it's let yourself have a shitty day. You can go show up at work, and if you're going through a lot personally, just let that be okay. I'm having a tough time right now and it's okay. And that way you can at least show up neutral or calm, and then you just tackle the day the best you can.
Yeah. And you don't have to air your dirty laundry out at the morning huddle or anything. We can show up and say, hey, hopefully your dental team is like a family to you. And you can show up and you can say, hey guys, I'm struggling with something. I might need some support today. I don't need to go in and be a bitch to everybody. I can, let them know that I'm having a hard time, and then ask for what I need. Ask for that support. What is it? Do you need someone to turn your room for you next because you need a second to go in the bathroom and cry for 3 minutes?
I was about to ask, how do you feel about asking and just letting them know? You don't have to go in, have TMI and go into the details, but I'm struggling this morning, or it was a rough morning getting out the door. I think I just need a minute. If anyone could offer help, I would take it right now.
Yes.
Or I'm going to try really hard not to lose my mind on people today. So, because that's the headspace I'm in. And please and thank you for your support.
Yes, absolutely. I had a situation personally recently where I'm very close to my nephew. I don't have kids, and my nephew is my kiddo. And so my brother comes over on a Wednesday night and drops this huge bomb that they're moving to Vermont. And I had clinic the next morning. I had to be there at 6:30, and I had to engage with all these students. And so that's exactly what I did when I got there. As I just told my coworkers, I said, I text them and I said, my brother gave me some really bad news. I'm falling apart this morning. I can't talk about it. I just need you to know I'm falling apart this morning. And it was great because when I got there, nobody asked me. They just would come by, touch me on the shoulder, give me a squeeze. And then what do you need? And then as I got into my day, I was okay because I got distracted, but it was just this really comforting and supportive time when we were starting the huddle and everything, because they knew that I needed something. They didn't know exactly what it was, but they were there, kind of just quietly supporting me. And just that little reach out, that little text of not myself, but I can't talk about it.
Now, I think it'd be interesting to be an advocate, or I want to take the side of the hygienist who's working in a chaotic practice where they might not even have time or space for that. I had a client who was managing 4 ops by herself, And I think she saw 15 patients. It was insanity.
Oh my gosh.
I have so much anxiety.
Insanity. So for someone like that who's in a practice who's like, hey, we're all in survival mode here. If I have a messy day, they don't even have room to give me space. I'm curious to know how you guys might approach that as a clinician. Like, what do you think your approach would be in that scenario?
My first thought is find another job.
2 week notice.
That's not the right answer. That's not the right answer. That's not helping in the moment.
But sometimes it can be the right answer, right? If you're being essentially abused and taken advantage of, there's a moment when you got to check in and go, I need to get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but for that clinician that can't get out of there, or, you know, that she has to, or he has to deal with that particular day. I think that stress management is so important, because there are things that aren't going to be changed in that person's day. They're still going to have to manage those 4 rooms. They're still going to feel like they're in what I call the black hole of dental hygiene, you know, that as we start feeling like we're isolated and alone in those operatories. And what is she doing outside of those 4 walls to take care of herself? Is there exercise happening? Is there a meditation? Is there, you know, or is she going home and trashing her body and drinking a bottle of wine and staying up until 2:00 in the morning and coming to work on 4 hours of sleep? So there's got to be that balance outside. If you're going to take on and choose to stay in a very, very busy or really honestly unreasonable situation like that, what are you doing to support yourself outside of that? What do you think, Machele?
Which one?
Machele.
Oh, me. Okay. So with this one in particular, she's really good in self-care, and we had that all on lockdown. But it's interesting because I think now it sounds like, and I'm not as involved in the hygiene industry as I once was, but it sounds like there's a need for hygienists. There's a shortage, when for so many years there was an overage and it was tough to find a job. But it sounds like that is not the case anymore. And ultimately, this client did end up resigning. But for those hygienists who are in that situation in a practice where their needs aren't met, I would assume one of the fears is like, what if I can't find a job? Let me just stay here in this practice that violates all of my ethics and personal boundaries and so forth, rather than doing the scary thing of finding a new job. And I would like to offer that that's not as scary as it once was. And I know several practices that are really having a difficult time finding dental hygienists. So if you're not happy, I would really make sure you have a good convincing story as to why you're staying in that practice.
And sometimes it goes back to that 12-year-old. I had a student tell me once, she said, I don't know if I want to take a job permanently right out of school because I have a tendency to stay in relationships when I should have gone a long time ago. And so she said, if I don't temp first and I jump in and I just accept this job, if I don't like it, I'll stay and I'll stay and I'll stay. And then there's that 12-year-old, right?
Yeah.
That's fascinating, because I was just here thinking like, wow, so many of us stay in so many toxic, abusive situations. You know, this job isn't a relationship, but it's relationships. It's an environment that is very toxic and showing itself time and time again that this is not, they don't see your worth. They're just kind of working you to death. Wow. But I think this is the time, you know, we're seeing this in so many aspects of the world right now. Like, but this is the time to stand up and like, we are done being treated like, you know, a prophy mill. Like, you know, my body is, you're not going to destroy me mentally and physically for the sake of your practice building.
I think a lot of hygienists are scared to stand up for themselves. And I even get, you know, I'll get text messages from students or former students, graduates, where there's things happening in the practice that are illegal.
Yes.
And they won't report. They're afraid to report. And even if they leave the practice, they still don't want to report because they don't want their name attached to that, because then they think they're going to get on some list and not be able to get another job. And I just think it's time we need to advocate for ourselves and stand up for ourselves in that way.
Yeah. And do you guys like, and I've never been a hygienist, but what percentage of hygienists do you think has like a list of like deal breakers? Like, I won't work in a practice if this, or this happens. Or do you think it's pretty gray for the most part?
I think it's pretty gray. I can't even say that I had a deal breaker. I mean, I know I've been like, I joke, like someone takes my loupes and my lights and doesn't give me instruments, like I'm retiring from dentistry, right? Like I can joke about that, but I personally did not have that. And I put up with a lot of things for years. I was in a very abusive, but looked cute and sweet. And I got all the things I wanted, but she was so mean and such a bully. So I don't know. What do you think, Kandice?
I agree with you. I think going in, and I'm glad you brought this up, Machele, because this could be definitely something to talk more to the students about before they go out. And because as a young hygienist, I didn't have that list. I started building it as I had the experiences, but then would still stay sometimes even after I started building my list. And so, maybe as educators, in my world, we need to start helping the students build that deal breaker list. But like for me, I started to see that if the doctor wasn't being honest to the patient, that was a deal breaker to me.
Yeah.
Or if the work wasn't good, that was a deal breaker to me. I hear about sexual harassment stuff. That would be a deal breaker to me. Things like that. But I think you're right, Machele, that we go into it with this very gray area and not having that defined list.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and I don't know if you guys have seen Amber Auger's new Thrive in the Op program, but it solves a lot of those problems. And I think if I was a hygienist, certainly if I was a young hygienist and not happy, I would run to Amber's website because she solves so many problems in that program. It's going to be really interesting to see the impact of that in the hygiene industry.
That's great. And, and I always try to be very transparent. I'm very open about my journey in life. And one of the things that I'm working on with Machele is the fact that I do come from a very altruistic place where I want to be philanthropic. I want to help people. I genuinely enjoy that. But I stayed in a lot of practices for a really long time because I felt like those patients needed me. Like if I wasn't there, who was going to protect them? Or I don't know. I took that on, but in a very unhealthy way. So now my altruistic, philanthropic soul was becoming very toxic. Would you say? I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but I get really upset if I can't help people, but that is to my detriment sometimes.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of hygienists.
Yeah, I think so too. And when you were saying that, I was thinking about the mindset also of being more concerned about our patients' health than they are. So we take all this on for them and, who's going to see them next? Well, who's going to take care of them? Well, if you took care of yourself and moved on, there would be a perfectly capable hygienist that would step in and do that, in your place. But it's we get emotionally attached. I think we want to help. We want to be that. That's what we signed up to do, right? We didn't go to hygiene school to, for the fun of it. We went because we wanted to help people. We wanted to change people's lives. And so definitely I've been in those situations before where I didn't want to leave my patients.
So that's actually a great segue into my next thought, because some of the things that, like I said, I was thinking about before we came on was how, if we're managing our mind, we are better team members. We can work in a healthier environment. People help us when we're having those rough days. We help others. But it's also so the one thing that I found when I came back from COVID, went months without treating patients, and, 2020 was a heavy year, and I was exhausted, not from the physical, issues with seeing patients, but from the energy exchange with people. I was alone in my house during quarantine. I did not exchange energies with other people. And I was so mentally exhausted at the end of the day, just bouncing from one patient to the next patient and not processing what happened at the end of that patient. And a lot of those cases, I saw how they were struggling. They had sleep issues, they had airway issues, they had time. There were so many things, and I was taking it and it was sitting on me all day long, and I was not processing before I got my next patient back. And just to end cap the story, this week, this just happened. So I've gotten better about that, really, making sure I write my notes, and I'm not carrying all that information to the next patient that I'm trying to remember, because we're running behind and all that. But this week I had just a amazing patient in the chair, was listening to all my education, excited to make changes. I mean, she put me in that high, right? That hygienists get when patients really want to learn and be engaged and change, the outcomes for their oral health. And then my next patient was a stoic, don't talk to me, like notes previously was like, he ain't interested. And so I'm trying to use my motivational interviewing, letting him know I'm here for him. But like to go from that high and just plummet to the other person that does not want to hear from me, it crushed me in that moment. And I was like, okay, how do I manage this? I got to manage this. So how do we manage our minds and our souls and everything when we are having we're taking on that from patients, like hour after hour, if you're lucky, hour after hour, but sometimes 30 minutes after 30 minutes with patient care. Do y'all have any thoughts?
I had a couple of things. One, not taking it personally.
Yeah.
Because it's not personal. And even, I see a lot of things on social media where hygienists are really upset, even that patients are coming in and questioning their ability to sterilize the room. And it leaves the hygienist feeling like she's incompetent. Well, what about the patient's fear? That patient has been living in a pandemic along with the rest of us. And so they might have this huge fear of my mom. I just got my mom to come in to see me last week because she has been terrified to step into any dental office or any doctor's office. And so she came in with that attitude of, did you clean everything? Right. But that's not about me. That's not about my competence. It's about her own fears. So shifting our mindset from that, this is not personal is one. And then I have this little thing that I like to call 60 seconds, check yourself before you wreck yourself breaks. So it doesn't take long, and it's ground, feel, breathe. Okay. And it might even only take 30 seconds, but really like as you're having those moments, and I know sometimes we don't even want to stop and go to the bathroom or drink water, but just take a second to ground in your body. Do you feel your feet on the floor? What are you feeling? Take a second to acknowledge what you're feeling, and then breathe and take some deep breaths into your belly. And there's so much, I could talk to you about breath probably for an hour, but just our breath gives us so much as far as getting that fight or flight response under control. Are you in that fight or flight response? Trying to get to your next patient. So ground, feel, and breathe. Just take that second for yourself and then move on.
So I have a few days where I have 7 clients back to back to back. It's like a French fry cook at dinner time. And so I just kind of approach it, and it's taken a while to build this up, but I just look at it like my job in that 45 minutes or hour is to help them navigate whatever they're going through. And I assume half of them are going to be real messy. And if they're not, then I'm surprised. I think I would take the same approach with the hygiene schedule. I would just assume half the patients are going to be super excited to hear what I say, and the other half won't. It's totally fine. I won't take that on. I'll just meet them where they are and help them the best I can and move on. That's what I would do.
Well, it kind of goes back to that, what you were saying earlier about the story that you're telling yourself that, and I mean, y'all are both saying very much the same thing. Like, it's not about you. And I have been saying that for a really long time with patients with home care. And like, sometimes it's about our adjustment on how we approach them. And it has nothing to do, like if we're saying the same thing over and over again to them, obviously that's not going to work for every human being. And then when they come back and they don't, make changes, like we put that on us, or we get really burned out because we're frustrated that there's never a change. And instead of like going, okay, how can we help them meet them where they are? And I'll tell you what, like the moment I started doing motivational interviewing, my stress and my frustration and what I made their lack of home care mean about me as a hygienist changed drastically.
Oh, interesting. What did you find was the best resource to learn how to do that?
I took a bunch of courses. I've had it on the pot. Well, and granted, I definitely have the upper hand here because I can interview the experts and ask all the questions that my little mind can come up with. I have about 4 books sitting over here. I listen to a lot of podcasts with motivational interviewing. It's messy. And I've said this multiple times on this podcast. I am not great at it. And if I don't practice it on a routine basis, my brain immediately goes to like, I know things. You should listen to me because I know the things. You came here for my expertise. And instead of like engaging them in their lifestyle. And that has changed everything for me.
That's good.
And I do that with my team members now too, because again, it's not the story of, and I think about this with infection prevention. This is my struggle right now, is how to educate other professionals to create a safety culture, to be team members in preventing healthcare associated infections, to be a team to keep each other safe. And there's so many people that are against change and like, we've always done it this way. Why do I need to change? And I'm just looking at them like, how do you not see that this is the absolute wrong thing to do for infection prevention? And I have to then manage my mind and like coach myself and then ask these engaging, open-ended questions and kind of meet them where they are in this journey, even though I feel very dogmatic about infection prevention. Like, we run the ultrasonic for, the appropriate amount of time because that way we don't create percutaneous injuries and remove all the bioburden. That for an example. Or we wipe the room down twice because that is, for the love of everything clean, what we should be doing. And when they aren't, like, how can I engage them in that conversation that's not like being a dictator, which is what I want to do. So that's just my journey. I've lost topic. Sorry, I digress.
No. And I think motivational interviewing is a beautiful part of this conversation because you're right. It takes the pressure off of you and it puts the responsibility on to the patient. And I love that you're using it with your coworkers too. It's amazing. Even can work in romantic relationships because, you can have a different conversation because, we can have all of these responses to different people in our lives that at the end of the day probably really looks very similar. So engaging with those open-ended questions and letting it be the patient's idea, letting it be your coworker's idea, it shifts that responsibility off of you.
And, so once I listened to a podcast with Tim Ferriss and I learned something from him that I do quite often with all my relationships that has really helped me, but also made the situation and the conversation didn't put them on the defense. And that was the story I'm telling myself is that you're doing this because you don't trust that I know this or the story I'm telling myself is that you're doing the X, Y, and Z because you're retaliating against me or whatever. And they could be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't even know I was doing that. But the story I'm telling myself was a little chaotic. How do y'all feel about that conversation? How that would go?
Oh, that's 100% what we do in relationships. It's so interesting now that I've coached as long as I have. We always assume someone else's action is taken because of their thought about us. But people are pretty self-absorbed for the most part, like we kind of are supposed to be. And nobody thinks about other people near as much as we think. And so like an example is, say you have a patient you've been trying to get to do the home care stuff and comply and do all that, and they're not. Then your story oftentimes is something like, they don't respect me. They don't respect my opinion, whatever the story is. And it's never that. It's never that. It's just never about us. And I have an exercise I walk my clients through where I show them that. And it's always so fascinating because they're like, oh, okay, now I see it. It isn't about me. So it's something we all for sure do.
Kandice, do you have anything to add on that?
When you were saying that, I was thinking about how a dentist that I worked for a long time, he would always tell me to do things after I've already done them. And I would just stand there and like feel myself get 12, right? I'm
like daggers shooting from eyes. Like, exactly. You would be dead right now.
Like I want to stab you in the hand with my 867. And yes, and because when those words would come out of his mouth, I'm like, what I hear you saying is I'm incompetent. I don't know how to do my job. I'm not smart enough to do this. And what he was really saying is that he didn't realize I'd already done it and he was asking me to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's back to those relationships and that 12-year-old self.
Oh gosh. And I think so many of us can think of that exact moment where they just got hot and bothered and then of course we lash out. Well, at least that's what I do. Or you take it internal and you get really frustrated, but I lash out and I get very aggressive. I mean, I know that's a shocker to anyone who is listening to this podcast, but that's when I don't let it out and say, this is the story I'm telling myself and have that conversation, then shit goes bad real fast.
Yeah. And that's the thing, we have to realize where it's coming from too. So now that I know that that's a trigger for me, when he says that, then I just say, yes, sir. And I don't dagger him anymore because I now have that knowledge and that insight that that's about my own stuff that I needed to work on.
So we might have some people listening that have been managing their mind and really into their mental health for a really long time. And then we might have some people who have never, ever done this. And I will tell you, if you've never done this, the one thing that, I don't know if this would work for you, but the one thing that I heard on a podcast, I was like, okay, I think I get that. It was the fact that I go to the gym. I've had a personal trainer before. I have been very into my nutrition. I'm very into how do I educate myself? And we do all of these things without any stigma. But the moment you say I have a therapist and start managing your mind, something is wrong with you. And that is absolutely not the case. If you don't have a healthy mind, you don't have a healthy body in a lot of ways. So hopefully that you hear that and you're like, yes, I'm going to go do it. So we might have two different people listening to this podcast right now. Do you have one tip for the advanced person to kind of manage their mind in a dental office or in an environment that's where you're taking in a lot of energies from people? And then one little thing that somebody could do just kind of get started.
So for the person getting started, I really don't know if there is as much stigma around seeing therapists and coaches as there used to be. But it really doesn't matter what you have going on in your life. Anyone in the world could use an hour of time with someone who is objective and just there to hold space for them to talk about their life and look at it from a new perspective, which as much as your friends and family care, they all have an agenda because they're human and we all have agendas. So even if your life's pretty even killed and you don't have a lot going on, there is a ton of value in just having an hour focused, two brains on your life and how you could view it differently. Because a lot of times we're wrong about all of the thoughts we have that are causing us pain. We're 100% wrong about them. And it's really hard to see that in your own mind. A fish doesn't know what's in water. And so I would highly encourage you just to even give it a shot. Reach out to a few therapists or coaches. It depends on what you're kind of working through as far as where you would go. For the advanced, what was the specific question there? The tip for that?
Do you have a tip for somebody that maybe they're doing a lot of things, but that they right now you're kind of got me on this, do something for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Anything like that.
Yeah. So we're doing this 75 new challenge in my new group coaching program. And so one thing you could do is look at an area of your life that you're wanting to improve and chunk it down to one small 15-minute habit you can start implementing that the result from the compound effect of doing that day after day after day would be big enough to have a difference in your life. And we can do anything for 15 minutes. I could watch wrestling for 15 minutes.
Golf.
Yeah. I could watch golf or freaking NASCAR or something even for 15 minutes. And if you do it, and you have to do it in the morning because it's so easy to talk yourself out of it if you try to do it in the afternoon. And oftentimes you don't even remember doing it because it goes by so fast. Yeah, that would be my tip.
Good stuff. How about you, Kandice?
Well, for the beginner, I'm in a lot of fitness groups because I'm a kettlebell coach and I do a bunch of nutrition stuff. And I've always seen people will wake up one morning and be like, I want to be fit, but I need to be fit before I can go to the gym. Well, how does that work? Okay. And they want it today. They want to make these really healthy, big ass salad for lunch and go do a 35-minute workout. And then they want the biceps or they want the pull up or they want the swimsuit ready body. And it doesn't work that way. It's little changes at a time that we build the bicep or we build up whatever that muscle is. And it takes time. And it's the same thing with our minds. And I'll see that with clients as well. I'll even have a client that says, I need you to fix me, or I need to fix myself really, really quickly. Well, it doesn't work that way. We don't fix ourselves really, really quickly. We fix ourselves a little bit at a time. Just like if I want to do a pull-up, might take me 6 months. Or whatever that might look like. So I would say having grace with yourself and setting your expectations clearly, that it's a small changes, those little tiny micro changes, they add up over time. and be patient with yourself. Make one small thing, like Michelle's saying, 15 minutes a day can make a big difference. And then with the more advanced people, I would say to think about where you need to dig deep. Like, where are the things that when they come up that they hurt your soul, and you need to do that soul work? Is it, abuse that you've been avoiding looking at? Is it relationship stuff that you've been avoiding looking at? And dig into those really deep, scary places.
Great advice from both of you. How does one as a dental professional navigate the social media forums and not kind of, yeah, I saw it. I heard it. I heard the gasp. I saw the face. Because the group think venting session, that is the most unhealthy thing I've ever seen in my life, and that I've been a part of, been involved in, may have even started a few bazillion years ago. How does one not engage or be healthy in that? Or do you just like shut it all down and just never go on them? Like, what?
I have to pick and choose what groups I'm in. And there are some I've just gotten out of because I was in there reading stuff and I wanted to comment, but then I didn't. And then I would get into this place where people would start talking about mental health, and I felt there was bad information out there, and I felt like I needed to chime in. I'm like, you know what? I can't be everybody's therapist. That's not why I'm here, And so I would either get out of the group, or I have to have an agreement with myself that if I'm going to be an observer, in what capacity am I going to be an observer in this group? And for me, it's just better not to see it at all, because you know what happens behind that keyboard when people get typing. And
I've been one of those people. Trying to manage that. But yes, I definitely know when I see a bunch of bad information, it is my trigger. And Machele has actually helped me very much trying to come from this as of a more curious mind. Like, tell me why you think this or where you learned this, versus me going for the carotid artery every time in a conversation, which is definitely my MO. Machele, do you have any thoughts on that? Maybe from things you've taught me.
Yeah, from a personal space, I really protect my energy. I got rid of all the groups and all the things that weigh me down. I don't even watch the news anymore. I literally have no idea what is going on in the world most of the time, unless it ends up on TikTok. But I would just, if you're in a group and it causes you a lot of stress, I would make sure the tax you're paying to be in that group is worth the return you're getting from being in it. And if it's all drama and no upside, I would sayonara.
Yeah.
But sometimes we like drama. Sometimes we like getting in the trenches and fighting it out. So I would be honest with yourself about it and go from there.
Truly. I mean, that's an excellent point. Like, I know I watched The Real Housewives for a reason. Like, I'm going to choose that for a different reason than I choose to watch PBS. Like, very different beasts. And I'm definitely in a headspace sometimes when I'm there. But I think too, just really reassess, what is everybody saying? Are they saying the same thing? Is anything ever getting better from their comments? If they're chronic posters, is it the same shit show day after day?
Yes. And nothing we say to them on a comment back is going to change their stance anyway. What impact, I love what you said, Machele, about would you say is the tax you're
paying worth the return you're getting?
Yes, I love that. I'm going to remember that next time I get in this situation. Is it, are the time it takes you to type out that comment and the energy and the emotions you feel around it, what are you getting in return for that?
Yeah. What's the payoff?
Yeah. What is the payoff?
That's awesome. So any last comments as we kind of wrap things up, and anything I didn't talk about, that you have seen being a dental hygienist, working with dental hygienists, being in dentistry, just even with patient care? This doesn't have to be just dentistry. This is all of healthcare, right? When we are caring for other people, we may develop some bad habits. Any thoughts on that?
One thing I think I would like to offer, because a few of the hygienists that I worked with were in really difficult practices. If you're making the practice owner the villain, that's going to make you the victim. And if you're the victim, you're powerless. You're just going to work hoping he's going to magically get it someday, and he's just going to automatically start giving you an hour for appointments. And you really can piss a lot of your life away waiting for other people to change, whether it's in the practice or in relationships. And notice when you're making someone else the villain, because all you're doing is giving up all your power and control. Because the truth is, you don't have to go to that practice. You can resign. You can find a practice that works for you. And if you're putting responsibility of your emotions on someone else, it is like the worst thing you can do for yourself. And so otherwise you're just hopeless waiting for someone else to change so you can feel better. And that just doesn't work. So take ownership and make those hard changes.
Yep. And I would piggyback on that about take ownership, because, one of the things I talk a lot about is personal responsibility. And some people will unfollow me or whatever on some things when I start talking about this, because if we're waiting around for other people to change for us, then it's never going to happen, right? What are the things that you need to look at in your life, in your workspace, that you have the power over? What do you have to control that you can change today, you can change tomorrow, you can change a little bit over time that makes a difference for you, and take that power back. Do it, you have to make the step, and it's not always easy.
Yeah.
This is good. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today. This is exactly the conversation I was hoping we would have around mental health for this month. And if anyone wants to learn more from both of you, take courses, become a client, whatever it is, where can they do that with both of you? I'll start with Machele.
Okay, so you can visit my website, lifeleapcoaching.com. I do offer free consultation calls if you're curious about how I could help you with what you're going on or what you're going through. And I do work one-on-one, and I also have a group like I had mentioned. But lifeleapcoaching.com is where you can find all of that.
And then my website is CandiceSwarthout.com or InspiredEducationWellness.com. Those will take you to the same place. I do have a contact page there where you can contact me, and it'll send me an email. So I am available to do continuing education courses for, any kind of hygiene or dental group. And then if you're in Texas, I also would be available to take you on as a client, as a private client, because my LPC license is just like our lovely dental hygiene license. It's Texas. So you can reach out to me that way.
I guess the mind is different when you cross the border and go to Oklahoma.
I guess it is. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you both so very much because this is an early morning conversation. I hope that it is helping a lot of people, and love you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Machele. It was great.
Thank you, Machele. It's nice meeting you, Kandice.
Nice to meet you, Machele.
Well, another great week, another great episode. We thank you all so much for listening each week. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, whatever podcasting app you're using. Also, just a reminder, our guests are so fantastic that they love when you reach out. They love when you interact with them on social media. And you can interact with us on social media as well at Instagram or Facebook. We're also on LinkedIn. You can find us at A Tale of Two Hygienists. You can also go to our website, ataleoftwohygienists.com. And we would love for you to go there and subscribe for our newsletter. We have lots of stuff on our website. We have a learning center. You can search for any episode. This is an easy place for you to find the links for our CE courses and take the test. There's just so much more there. So head over to ataleoftwohygienists.com. And if you want, you can also send us an email. I'm Machele at ataleoftwohygienists.com. And then there's Andrew, who is Andrew at ataleoftwohygienists.com. And we just want to say thank you so much. If you love this episode and you're loving the podcast, we would love for you to subscribe and leave us a review. And, 5-star, go ahead and do it. 5-star, just hit that 5-star and then leave us a review. We really appreciate it. We love reading them. It fuels our fire, and we just appreciate you guys so much. I think that's it, Andrew. Anything else?
Nope, that's it. Have a good week, everybody.
Bye, y'all.